No, I have one more. Yeah, I have a late one today. From 6:30 to 8, I believe. That's a very long day, yeah. This is my second. For today, yes. Tomorrow I have another 3, and then everything will calm down for us. For me, at least, yeah. More time to do actual meetings. Produce some business, Not just talk about it. How about you? Is your schedule dense as well? Okay, good. All right. You should come to my panel tomorrow. I'm doing a big panel with it's all around financial institutions and how to move to net zero. I will tell you after the session, but I think it starts at 11. Hopefully, but we're doing so many events. She may not have it on her radar, but I can send her the details. It's it's going to be interesting. It's in the blue zone in our MDB pavilion, which is on the other side. We have Sally Hamdallah from QNB Al Alfadi there. We have the global chief of sustainable finance from BBVA, the Spanish banking group. We have our managing director for financial institutions, who is Francis Malish. I don't know if you know him. I will moderate it. Yeah. We have also a member from the NGFS. Maybe it could be quick.
We are all here. We are just waiting for
I don't know personally, but
the regulator, the head of financial regulatory authority. Yes. Supporting me. I really was trying to catch him and call him all the time and come in. The FRA in the strong Egypt. It's the regulator for any MBFI. So every consumer financial microfinance company has to get the license and provide with the law and the rule from set by the FRA. Banks the same, but with the CBE Central Bank of Egypt.
yeah, of course.
So actually you have two kind of regulators in Egypt, one for the banks and one for the MBFI. So we, as an MBFI, the microfinance and consumer finance and
To them,
have to get our license from the FRA. And they have agreed to all the work and put in the process and rules that we have to follow.
عايز الناس اللي بره دول. لا تصدق ان هو ما عندوش بتاع خالص.
I think we should offer more coffee points, then people would have easier time waiting.
Actually, he told us that we're going to join you, but I have to read in 10 minutes. Anybody in the panel before?
Only by name, no. I have not been to Egypt before.
Your first time?
It's my first time, but I will be coming in January to do a proper round and meet our clients and meet everybody.
Sure. If you have time, we'll be happy to have 15-20 minutes when you come back next month or when?
I'll be coming in January because we'll most likely be launching our green economy finance facility for Egypt in January, so I will join that together.
It will be grateful if you come back 50 minutes. And you'll come in so the one in the blue suit, their king is Ahmed Tawfiq.
Yeah, I've just been introduced. Yeah.
You know him, right?
No, Mim just said, just introduced us this minute
He's
ago.
a deputy of the Ministry of Finance.
Yes.
Very active, very smart.
Wonderful.
Hussein sitting beside me is my colleague in Raya, and he's specialized in manufacturing. So if you know Garib, the only recycling factory in the founder. Then he built the own manufacturer for design venture with Raya and Flyers for manufacturing the ACs and the home appliances. And he's our goal in manufacturing.
Yeah.
I'm initially an engineer.
Okay.
And I had my career in the IT. I then switched to the business, being responsible for one of retail chain, biggest retail chain in Egypt, owned by Raya. And finally, I'm the CEO for MN, which is the financial inclusion enabler model, where we do a lot of activities in the sector of financial inclusion, of the microfinance, SME, of the consumer financial place, bill payment, electronic payment.
Interesting to hear.
And Mr. Yahya is the vice chairman for National Bank of Egypt, which is the biggest and largest.
Yes.
The National Bank of Egypt are shareholders in MN by 24%. This is Muhammad Khalid, the one coming down to start our
It's like amazing.
Okay.
They're never. ازيك حبيبي عامل ايه؟ انا من 10 دقايق.
Hello. Hi, good evening everyone.
عندهم اسئله ليا.
نقفل البيبان. ممكن نقفل البيبان. Okay, so thank you for coming. I am honored today to be moderating such an important panel on an event as important as COP27, which is a very high-level event on global climate action. Today we talk about small and micro enterprises. where at a country like Egypt, we have almost 3.5 million micro enterprises to the best of, of our knowledge, and these are between formal and informal enterprises. These small and micro are the backbone of our economy. They represent 90% of our economic activities. However, at a time when the world faces such a bleak and uncertain future due to the state of the Earth climate, we tend to ignore the role of micro enterprises in responding to climate change and becoming agents of climate resilience. Having said this introduction, please allow me to welcome our esteemed panelists. Dr. Mohammed Farid, Chairman of the Financial Regulatory Authority and Vice Chairman of the International Organization of Securities Commission, Mr. Ahmed Koshik, Vice Minister of Finance, Mr. Yahya Abul Futuh, Deputy Chairman, National Bank of Egypt, Ms. Maya Hanrox, EBRD Director of Green Financial Solutions, Mr. Hazem Moghazi, CEO and co-founder of Raya Holding, Mr. Osama Zaki, CEO of Raya Manufacturing. So, because I know that Mr. Mohammed Farid has very limited time, I will start by shooting the first question directly to him. And thank you for making the time, of course, to be with us. So what we would like to know is, in light of the importance of the role of microfinance, what is or can be offered by the Financial Regulatory Authority for promoting green microfinance to enhance the role in green transition?
Good afternoon, everyone, and I believe it is very challenging with all the voices outside, but we'll try to be as loud as possible. Before delving into what the FRA can be doing and supporting microfinance companies when it comes to green finance, I believe it would be quite important. I'll hold this to be. I believe it would be quite important to tell you the journey that the FRA took with other related parties when it comes to sustainability and green aspects, and as well microfinance that has been flourishing since the promulgation of the microfinance law in 2016, because that was the critical point whereby you managed to create microfinance companies that we have joining us today that would not have been possible before that law, and as well or NGOs that do provide microfinance services are being licensed now according to whichever tier that they are operating on, depending on their level of complexity, level of finance that they get to provide, and so on and so forth. The green concept and green disclosures, I believe it's embedded in our strategy a number of years ago. I believe the EGX in 2010 was one of the few pioneering, I would say, exchanges that dictated or managed to issue an index on sustainability. And here sustainability, it covers three components: environment, social responsibility, and governance. And probably that was in 2010 where everyone did not hear much about sustainability and the sustainability aspects. Maybe people were hearing about governance, but not sustainability with the level of complexity that we're saying. Following that, plenty of reforms took place across a number of years. However, two main decisions were issued by the board of directors of the FRA. One is pertinent to all listed companies, and the other one is pertinent to all financial institutions under the realm of the FRA. The most important is to conduct TCFD disclosures on carbon footprints and all related aspects to environment in terms of disclosures. What's the importance of this? The importance of this is that we have three levels usually that you look at when you're talking about carbon footprints and disclosures. There is level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 3 when you're talking about your other stakeholders and what is their carbon footprint with you. And here would come the importance of microfinance companies when they are obliged to do their reports. And I believe we have conducted several training programs for these microfinance companies and other companies as well, including financial leasing, insurance, on these TCFD disclosures, and hence they would be obliged at a point of time, maybe not nowadays because it's covering only tier 1 and tier 2 of disclosures on environment and carbon footprints, but eventually we're going to reach to that point. And this is not going to be a domestic requirement. Internationally, we have the ISSB, if we are all aware of, in Glasgow, COP26. there is an affiliate body of the IFRS association. It's called the International Sustainability Standards Board, which is operating like the IFRS. So the IFRS, what's the importance of the IFRS? It's the universality or the cross-cutting application of the auditing standards and the accounting report and financial reporting standards. The same thing would apply, I would say, in a period of 3 months, whereby the ISSB will be issuing the entire standards for sustainability and environmental components in the disclosures of companies. And this would be cross-cutting. And from here comes the importance of pushing for green investments, pushing for green finance, and when it comes to microfinance as well. So how can we help as the FRA? The starting point, there hasn't been a complete regulatory framework covering green bond issuances, blue bond issuances, brown bond, which is called transition bonds, and so on and so forth. 4 weeks ago, exactly, there is a complete regulatory framework with all definitions that you can be looking for, from gender bonds, sustainability linked bonds. All of these types of bonds have been stipulated, and a regulatory framework has been set for them. And this is a crucial point, because no matter what microfinance companies, and here we're going to say what we're going to do, but no matter what microfinance companies or leasing or mortgage finance or whatever do provide green financing, but without being capable of securitizing these loans that they have provided and having a regulatory framework that is covering them, it would have been okay, fair enough, they're doing the right thing without being capable of refinancing themselves. So the starting point for microfinance and other financing companies to operate well in the area of green funding is to create the refinancing mechanism. And here, I would say a couple of days ago, we've seen the first issuance of a cash flow securitization bond, but it has some sustainability components. The project that they're doing, they're earmarking 10% of this project for the less privileged. They're building the buildings according to green code and so on and so forth. So it has some sustainability and green components. So starting point for financing companies to be able to benefit and to, I would say, increase their financing when it comes to green is to provide the refinancing. And now it is being set and up and running. The second component that we're going to do, and I believe in July, we had meetings with the 5 main biggest suppliers of microfinance, the biggest players in the market, and as well some of the NGOs. And before end of month, we're going to issue the guidelines for green microfinance. This to be helping you in deciding in your investees what are the different projects that can be considered as green and what can be considered as green and what can be considered as green and what is not. But after doing so, without having issued the regulatory frameworks for the securitization and issuing bonds backed by the green microfinance projects, I believe it would have been very problematic. But one of the challenges that we are going as well to support, so one area of support that we're going to provide is the fundamental descriptions of how microfinance, green microfinance can be operating. The second point would be the verifiers and validators. Because for you to be able to say that this bond is effectively a green bond that is backed by green loans provided for green projects, that would require some stamps, I would say, on the prospectus, and would require some validators to validate that these actually microloans are indeed green microfinance loans, and whatever bonds are indeed green bonds. And here we're going to set up the requirements for validators and verifiers to support bond issuers in that regard. We have already a set of international verifiers that we agreed upon. What is missing nowadays, and we have a committee that is studying the consultancy firms that are presenting to the FRA to be licensed by it to be verifiers. We have around in the pipeline maybe 5 to 6 players in that regard. That would facilitate the microfinance companies' work to validate that they have adopted the green methodologies in providing the required financing. One final point, when we have the ISSB, because currently we have around 6 methodologies or frameworks covering what can you define to be green. So we have the Global Reporting Initiative, we have the UN Global Compact, we have the TCFD, which we are obligating and requiring different companies to be disclosing their environmental impact according to it, and we have the SASB, and we have plenty of other, I would say, frameworks governing what is named to be green and the methodologies adopted. With the ISSB, which would be the international benchmark, and that is the ultimate point of having an international guideline that is combining all different methodologies in the framework of to be issued by the ISSB would be a game changer in that regard, because one of the difficult components is the comparability. How can I compare the projects that Aman is doing compared to the other microfinance companies, to the banks that are providing microfinance? With the different methodologies for the same company, you can be seeing different carbon footprints for the same projects, and hence the difficulty in comparability is quite cumbersome for investors to believe that these type of bonds and these types of financing are indeed achieving the required target. So this I believe at the point of issuance by the ISSB, it's going to be adopted by the IOSCO on again an international level, and most probably at the FRA level we're going as well to adopt the ISSB standards once they're out. And thank you, and apologies if I took more time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I mean, okay, impressed by everything that's happening with the Financial Regulatory Authority. At a point when we thought green microfinance is still new, apparently a lot has been done, and now we're waiting for implementers to start working on it, microfinance companies to start using it. So this takes me to the next question. Yes. Yeah. To the family. Yes. So this takes us to the next question, and Mr. Ahmed Koshek, Vice Minister of Finance. Having heard what Dr. Farid said, what else can the government do from the side of incentivizing microfinance? Putting this at the backdrop of Haya Karima projects, when we have a lot of microfinance initiatives taking place in the governorates and in remote areas.
Well, thank you. I hope you can hear me well, but I will also try to speak a bit loud, and I will be very frank with you. Egypt did a lot over the last couple of years to try to promote the transition toward a greener economy, but we're still in the beginning, and there's still a lot needed to be done. But related to your question, and I will try to be brief and to the point, I think there is a lot of incentives already in place that people are not aware about, or that there is a lot of incentive that can be slightly adjusted to accommodate to a large segment of microfinance. My piece of advice is that instead of moving towards more and more additionality when we have a lot of things that is not maybe well utilized or well known, that we should do more together to promote those things and to make sure that they are working for the benefit of everybody, including the microfinance segments. Let me give you a couple of examples. Today we were discussing something about we'll talk more about it later, about manufacturing of a certain product in Egypt. We have just released a strategy that is much more inclusive for the entire sector, for cars and spare parts and electrical vehicles. So it's this was an idea that is subset of that's so easily to be done. This is a big incentive package that is giving a financial incentive for producers in Egypt in those areas. So it's very easy just to adjust this to accommodate for another segment that can be serving better the microfinance segment or in Egypt in different governorates. We have, as you said, Haya Karima, that is creating huge amount of, the best incentive is that you're spending a lot of money in governorates near rural areas where 50% of the people living there, where most of the microfinance beneficiaries are there, and you just need to integrate this in a much more coordinated way. We did last year a new SME law that provides a lot of incentives for SMEs, those who are making up to 10 million turnover per year. They now just need to pay a turnover tax with a very simplified tax regime. But very little awareness is there about that. So my one piece of advice that I would suggest is we need to create the right platforms. We need to meet more regularly. We need to update each other about the challenges, but also about what's happening, and we need to fix what's existing to make it work better, instead of just keeping adding more and more initiatives that might not be fully utilized. One final thing I would just say also on that regard, to add to what my colleague Mr. Muhammad Farid just mentioned, from a government perspective, one thing that we are very willing, besides disclosure that he mentioned, which is very important and very important for everybody, for even decision makers to make a better guidance and better informed decision making. But one thing that we are very willing to put a lot of effort and resources in is to certify people working at the grassroots, at downside on the firm level. We believe that if we are going to go to micro firms and small SMEs and certify people working in those companies about what is green word that they are facing and they are hearing. We are talking about this. They are not aware about a lot of this. About maybe they are doing it, but they are not aware about, or maybe they can do small adjustment that can allow them to have access to those, or they are maybe not aware about the challenges or the opportunities. So one thing that we are very willing to do is to certify people in those companies so that they can become a certified TOT, exactly. To be certified people about and get a certain certificate that gives them full awareness, full understanding, full knowledge. I think this can be a turning point, because then you have 20 or 30,000 certified people on the ground, knowing what's happening in the world, opening their eyes about what the opportunities that they can have. And this is something that we are very willing to work with associations and business associations, as well as the Federation of Industry and other institutions, to put a lot of effort there to certify those people. خليه هنا بقى. اتفضل.
So thank you so much. And as you said, a lot is happening, but very little is actually cascading to the people. So there's a lot of effort on the government side, both at the Financial Regulatory Authority and the ministry. But the issue is that the main players in the market are not fully aware of the incentives and facilities that are taking place. So
Just to be clear, we are independent of the
I
government.
know.
So basically, he will do the training, we will benefit. So
Exactly. So at least we can, exactly, they will do the training, we will benefit from it. So now, since we have on the panel two very important financial institutions, the National Bank of Egypt and the EBRD, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, I would like to start by actually asking Mr. Yahya Abou Futuh, what is the role that the National Bank of Egypt, being the biggest national bank and the highest outreach to small and micro and medium-sized enterprises, what can be done to support green microfinance?
Sure that it's working now. According to our strategy in National Bank of Egypt, we are trying to link the financial inclusion with the financing for SME or microfinance. For the microfinance, we can finance it through the two channels. The first channel through the NGOs or through the companies allowed by the FRA. On the other hand, we already established 8 months ago a new product. It's called the Ali Business. The Ali Business is working actually with microfinance up to 2 million Egyptian pound. We succeeded in this product to achieve around 55,000 clients with granting around 25 billion Egyptian pound in around 33 products. During these products, we try to direct them to green economy or friendly economy with like recycling of glasses, carton, plastic, livestock financing, food trucks, and a lot of things. I believe that through these channels we can reach our direct the clients, the small clients, our microfinance beneficiaries from these products can direct them to the green economy and
Into context, uh, does anyone in the room know how much microfinance is being provided in Egypt in terms of figures this year? Apart from you, you're the one who provided our part of it. So we need to put it into perspective. Around 35 billion, and that is only from companies and NGOs, and from the banking sector, around the same amount, around
Yes,
32
around the same.
billion. And how many beneficiaries? And here we're talking about one product, which is microfinance. How many beneficiaries have benefited from this 60 to 70 billion of financing? عندك how many individual? Give me an individual. Million? 5.5 million. So here, yes. So here we're talking about a significant number of beneficiaries from microfinance services, and hence, if we managed to turn this into green investments and supporting as much as possible, I believe the impact and the masses would be quite significant. So that just to put things into perspective, that microfinance is not a small market size anymore. We have securitizations based on microfinance loans. We have companies that are being established on a regular basis. NGOs, banks as well are pushing because they're seeing the benefit and they're seeing the returns. It's not only the benefits, and hence competition is always very much praised because this would lower the cost of funding, lower the cost of borrowing, and so on and so forth. And apologies, but I wanted to put things into perspective for the audience. Thank you.
This is a very important piece of information because it makes the topic more relevant to what's happening worldwide. And as Dr. Mohammed said, it's the size that matters, the number, not only the volume. And put on it also a huge volume of investments that are being directed to microfinance. If we can imagine directing this to green, the impact will be amazing. So now going back to my colleague Maya, and I would like her to talk about greening and microfinance, but maybe from more of an international view because we operate in 35 countries and there's a lot of accumulated experience in green products targeting micro and small.
Yes, thanks very much, Reem. And I'm very glad that the business case was just outlined here, because I mean, the financial sector, I think, is going through quite some extraordinary transformational change right now. But when we talk about it, very often we tend to focus on like the big project finance deals, the big, business tickets. And I think the business case was just very clearly outlined. We cannot neglect the microfinance and the SME segment, of course. And I think it's also important because there is a human side to this climate effort that we are undertaking. And I think it is very difficult to explain and to sell and to get people on board on all these efforts if they feel that they're losing out. So I think if we can mobilize SME finance, microfinance, and make it green, then I think we will, people will understand that it's a win-win to really have this collective effort for climate change. So I think as EBRD, what are we doing? Of course, we rely on partners. As with many things, we've done some work in this sphere. So we have a microfinance program here in Egypt, which targets micro small enterprises. In this case, it's for women-led MSMEs. However, we've learned a lot from this program. We've learned that we can focus the micro lending towards very specific eligibility criteria and use of proceeds, and we want to do the same with green. We've just done a green microfinance line, actually not in Egypt, but in Jordan. And we're learning from this, and we definitely want to scale it up. Here in Egypt, I think what we did and what we learned so much from is that we really were able to give a facility of 80 million that went directly to a number of microfinance institutions such as Tamea. I'm always nervous about the pronunciation, and then Refi. And so we really think we can adapt that. What the big advantage that we have a very, very strong green strategy. So we've committed to being a majority green bank by 2025. That means that 50% or more, if we can do it, of our financing, of all of our financing, will be dedicated to green. And at the same time, we've also committed, because we thought, okay, but what about the rest? We cannot neglect the rest, the other 50%, of course. So we also have committed to being fully Paris aligned as of the end of this year. So all of our funding will be Paris aligned as of the end of this year, and then 50% will be dedicated green finance. And so we have this very strong green track record, and at the same time, we also have a very strong credit arm. Yeah, we've been lending, we've been on lending, we've been working with partners for many, many years, for decades, in fact, 3 of them. So we want to use this also for green microfinance. And for us, including microfinance institutions in the green financing really is a very important milestone. And it is very important for us because it helps us to diversify our portfolio of financing, partner financial institutions. And it helps us really to reach specifically the hard to reach segments of the populations in the countries that we engage in. So, and very often these are in the more remote areas, they're more underserved communities. So this is very important for our mandate. We also know that it's not easy. It's not simple. You've mentioned before that training, capacity building, certifications are important, and we fully agree. So we invest a lot of funding into capacity building programs, advisory services, and we have also a tool which makes it simple for a microfinance institution, for example, to identify very quickly what is green technology. Because very often, if you don't know, it's very difficult to check all the technical criteria. How does it compare? What's the benchmark? So we have something online that I would encourage you all to check out. It's available for Egypt as well. It's the Green Technology Selector. It's a very great database where you can just input a technology, a supplier, and it will show you directly whether it's eligible under EBRD's understanding of a green technology. So that is really takes out all the guesswork, all the analysis that sometimes it's quite hard for financial institutions to do in-house for them. So yeah, I fully agree. We can provide the financing, but we definitely need to marry it with technical assistance. We need to marry it with capacity building. We need to still explain a lot how to do those lines. And then microfinance institutions or other FIs, they can obviously harness this opportunity. And yeah, we're very keen on engaging more on this. So I'm very happy to be part of this conversation.
Thank you, Maya. And again, I need to reiterate how EBRD is committed to green. It's part of our mandate, it's part of our charter, and we are planning to become a very green bank very soon.
Yes, and but can I ask a question before I leave to the National Bank of Egypt, to Aman, and to the EBRD? If you have a project that is green, are you willing to lower your financing cost?
Yes.
Okay, so that's very clear. And for the National Bank of Egypt, you're willing to reduce your financing cost?
As long as we'll get a grant or
See,
subsidized.
see, it has to be a
finance
grant.
from EBRD.
So, from the one side, we are asking companies to do green investments and green projects, and hence they should be remunerated positively for doing that. And EBRD and other financing institutions should be remunerating this positively by reducing the cost for those type of projects as much as they could, and to be significantly different. Okay, statistically significantly different. Just yes.
So actually, we have right now a couple of examples that we already did without any support from any institution, because we do believe that we are responsible to have such like a fund. So actually, we started a couple of years ago an initiative for transforming the traditional fuel car into a natural gas one, where we succeeded to fund around 4,000 case up till now, and actually with the price which is less than the normal price by 10%, and given to the customer on an interest free. And this is real example that we have right now in the consumer finance. Maybe it's not in the microfinance, because we have a consumer finance, microfinance, SME. So I do believe the topic here that we are talking about can address each kind of financing. It's not only the microfinance, it can be directed to the consumer finance, microfinance, or even SME, depends on the size of the product. But actually, a real example from what we are doing right now, we have more than 4,000 projects had been financed with zero interest, and not zero, we are bearing all the interest. No, we are taking a commission from the manufacturer, which is half the interest rate that we got anyone. And it's a good project, and it flies.
So companies wouldn't complain if we make it mandatory as regulators, yes?
No.
To reduce the cost.
Maybe I need to comment because the transition to green, it needs collective actions from all the stakeholders. So business model should be sustainable, but it should be enabled by a mix of different type of finance that will enable the transition, because transition will take a long term. It is not a short term action. For sure, business model should be sustainable for the stakeholders, manufacturer, whoever, private sector, and to invite more and more to make it really scaling up the transition to be in shorter period. But I agree with you. Each stakeholder should lower their interest to make it happening, actually. Exactly.
Shall I answer for EBRD? Very briefly. So we have to tread carefully, because if we were crowding out your commercial banking sector in Egypt, I think you would not be happy about that. However, we have a very long track record in working with blended finance schemes where we use concessionality at small levels to try and hit green financing off the ground, and where we can de-risk financing structures. We're also looking very intensely and starting to work in these newer instruments like sustainability-linked loans and sustainability-linked bond structures, where you build in incentives that are financial incentives, because the interest rate is tagged to specific sustainability KPIs. So we're working on that.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you for the question, Dr. Farid. And I understand you have a commitment, so thank you. I can sit now. Yes. So I'd probably sit now. And again, we have heard a lot about the available incentives, the packages that the government, the Financial Regulatory Authority, the appetite of National Bank of Egypt and EBRD to support. And I would address now Mr. Hazem, what from your point of view as an actual microfinance company, what are the challenges that you foresee in financing green, and what are the opportunities?
First, addressing the challenges. It's like any other green project, which is lack of awareness. That I do believe this is going to take a long time to transform, especially on the client base. If we're talking about the awareness from the government side, from the regulator, from the MBFI, from the bank, I see now in such like an event that there are a good awareness level that everybody can see. However, still the customer cannot see the value of being going to a green. And I think our role is to collaborate together in order to have a motive or incentivized proposition, product design that he can benefit from it on a monthly basis. So giving the example of transforming anything to green and paying the total amount in one lump sum is going to be painful for the customer. The good thing here that we can put it on an installment, whether a consumer or a micro based, to be able to pay this monthly installment, and the customer can feel that he is going to save on a monthly basis an amount. This is the only way for the shortcut to go directly to the consumer and get him awarded by such like a product design. So this is one of the challenge, which is the lack of awareness, the high risk, of course. Financing a new project or a new product which is green is a higher risk than the other traditional one. The low return on investment, as you said, usually the ROI for any green project is much lower than the traditional one. So these are mainly the three main challenges that we are talking about. In terms of opportunities, I can see there is a huge opportunity. The market size is very big. We are talking about, as Mr. Mohammed mentioned, 5.5 million now, and these are not 5.5 million beneficiaries, it's 5.5 million family. So you can imagine how many beneficiary from this. And by the way, just for people to know, this industry is growing in Egypt for the last 6 years, 40% year over year, with an exception of the Corona year, which is only 18%. But we're talking about an industry which is very, very fast growing. We're talking about an average of 40% year over year. And we do expect that this will continue for the coming few years. The 5.5 million beneficiary right now are expected to reach 10 million in 2030. So we see how big is the market. We see the gross rate is very high gross rate right now. So the access to the electricity in Egypt is quite different in many other African countries. So it's much easier, cheaper for having a product based on an electricity than having based on solar. So this is mainly the opportunities that we see.
Thank you, Hazim. That's very enlightening. And actually, let me now ask Mr. Osama a question more about implementation. And from your experience, and as we know, e-mobility has a huge impact on green. Mobility in general is, whether it's vehicles, motorcycles, cars, has a huge impact on carbon emissions. E-mobility is something that we look at it with a lot of ambition and excitement for having a better impact. So from your experience in this area, can you tell us how can e-mobility have a link to microfinance?
Actually, before tackling this, I would like to thank the panelists for the shared information, because actually it gives us a bold message that we are at the implementation phase now. There is some policies, as Mr. Ahmed said, need just alignment between the different stakeholders to be well utilized and implemented. For us at Raya, our nature of job that we are working, operating in different industries, almost 13 different industries, and we used to try to connect the dots between the different industries. Actually, we have two industries. One is the microfinance and one the micromobility. And if we will look to the transportation sector, we will see a promising opportunity in a country like Egypt, in a lot of African countries as well, like Morocco, because for this COP, we are addressing the climate action towards Africa. So actually there is a lot of African countries like Morocco, Ghana, Kenya, and others as well, where the governments have focused now on the transition for the mobility sector to the e-mobility. Actually, it cannot be done by one stakeholder, private sector or government. It should be a collective work between many stakeholders. They have the target for the transition to be validated, implemented, and de-risking for the business models as well. If we look to the transportation sector and its contribution to the emissions, it is high emissions for the transportation sector. How to connect the micromobility to the microfinance? Actually, if we will take Egypt as an example for the micromobility sector, specifically the two-wheelers, nowadays we have in Egypt 5 million two-wheelers are running nowadays, means 5 million families. And surprisingly that maybe 70% of them are using these two-wheelers as the source of their income, especially in rural areas. So, but as Hazim said, the lack of awareness about the reason for the transition, the advantages for the transition for the e-mobility, they need a lot to be done. And this needs a collective effort, need really an impact focused actions to be taken by most of the stakeholders to raise the awareness, especially if this transition will lead not only to an impact from the environmental point of view, that there will be savings for the carbon footprint, for the emissions, for the air pollution, but also it will tackle the social impact for the users of this one. Actually, they are spending a considerably good amount of money for the fuel, for the maintenance, for the traditional petrol operated two wheels. Once they will switch to the e-mobility or the e-two-wheelers, they will save up to 80 to 90% from this spending. So there will be actually a direct social impact to these 5 million families that will grow till 2030 by 7 to 10% year over year. It will reach to almost 8 millions by 2030, emitting 25 million of CO2 equivalent by 2030. So if we will put an ambition target to make a transition for 50% of this, I think we will save almost 15 to 20 million tons of CO2 by this by 2030. Huge impact on the environmental. The good thing also that there will be an economical impact for the fuel subsidy, because the 5 million or 8 millions by 2030 are using a minimum of we can say 7 billion liters of petrol or fuel per year. So it's a big saving for the government for saving such amounts. Thank you very much. Sure. So actually, it needs to have a clear roadmap for the implementation, to have a clear plan with the different stakeholders for the pilot to be validated, the pilot phase to be validated, and for the different milestones for scaling up till reaching the target. So there is a lot to be done. Work should be done collectively, and we are at Raya are inviting all the stakeholders to start this journey immediately, targeting the transition for the e-mobility by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Osama. So today, when I was contacted to moderate this panel about microfinance and green microfinance, I thought this is something that really doesn't relate. I mean, microfinance is for sustainability, for living, for decent living. Including green in it was for me something new. But this today in this panel, we learned a number of things. We knew that there's a huge demand on microfinance, and there's a big number of beneficiaries that are actually taking microfinance. We also knew that the government and the financial regulatory authority are actually investing a lot of time and effort to make sure that green finance is at the top of the agenda and that it is actually growing. And I would like now to ask Mr. Yahya a quick question. We heard about an implementation idea, e-mobility, transforming motorcycles to become green and electric, and these are 5 million, right? Now probably expanding and emitting a lot of carbon, having a huge negative impact on the green. Is this something that the National Bank of Egypt would be interested to design a special product to finance?
Of course, it's a very important project we can finance directly with the main manufacturers here in Egypt to allow them to produce these products here in Egypt rather than importing from outside. And on the other hand, we can deal with the companies like Raya for financing these people with a long-term finance for 2 years or 3 years for the last beneficiary with a good price and special price for them as long as it will go in this direction.
That's very encouraging. And Maya, this is something that EBRD would have something to add to in terms of training, raising the awareness, encouraging this type of activities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, of course, this has been our model for a long time. All our green economy financing facilities, they come with a capacity building, training, project consultant advisory attached. The our SME program, the ASP program that you know so well, of course, has also always followed this approach of yes, we can provide finance, but maybe more importantly, we can provide capacity building, training, and advisory services so that the money that we lend comes with a much higher leverage and much more potential for impact. So I think this has always been our model, and if we are successful to expand our pilot that we've just done in Jordan, and of course the experiences that we had from the Egyptian MSME financing, which we would like to expand to more green lines, then this will continue to be our approach for sure.
Thank you, Maya. And I think this could be an interesting start to greening micro enterprises. People that are making a living out of using their motorcycles for delivery, the last mile delivery. This can be an interesting green microfinance, especially that, as Mr. Yahya said, the manufacturing itself is an opportunity for banks, and the microfinance companies can actually work on financing the users of the motorcycles. Uh, Hazim, do you have anything to add on this?
Yeah, I just want to add that at the end of the day, our success is to develop a product to the customer that he feel value added from having such like a product, to feel a real benefit from that. And in order to do so, we have to align the strategy and the goal between all the stakeholders. I mean, the stakeholders here are the government, the FRA, the DFI and the banks, the MBFIs, and the supplier and the manufacturer. So at the end of the day, we are 5 stakeholders. We have to align together because our goal at the end of the day is to introduce an appropriate and incentivized product to the customer that can feel and to start using before having the culture of feeling green for such like a simple user. This is going to be better.
Any comments from the panel on the
And
discussion?
maybe I hope that during the coming year we will be able to cooperate with the different stakeholders to at least start implementing the pilot phase and to present in COP28 the success of it and the roadmap for the transition for the mobility sector or the micro mobility sector to the e-mobility by the enabling of the microfinance efforts, green microfinance efforts.
Thank you. So actually today is, I believe, is the beginning of a long-term cycle of discussions that we will start taking green microfinance into the picture. Prior to this event, we were only talking about greening big projects, carbon emissions, and SMEs were also involved in terms of their carbon emissions. Today, I think we will start, and maybe this will be the beginning, we'll continue later on with other financial institutions, with banks, and with the government to talk about how green finance can impact micro and very, very, very small investments. Now we're open to questions from the floor.
Thank you. I want to thank the panel because it's a very interesting discussion with a lot of information provided. Going green with microfinance, which is an industry close to my heart, can be very easy and can be very difficult. But one of the challenges that we really need to focus on, as Sam Hazem said, about the alignment of stakeholders, but I want to focus on one specific point. If we're going to use DFIs and donors and cheaper funding one way or other to pass all the reduction in the cost of funds to the final small business owner or micro business owner, sustainability is a key. Because it's very easy to have a program that's available for 2-3 years and it's not there anymore. And that was one thing that it has to be some sort of a long-term revolver or something like that. And if the other challenge of training the people or giving them the real checklist of becoming eligible for this program, I think it will be very easy to solve and very difficult to implement. Just my.
I think this is a very, very interesting comment because I really believe that sometimes when all efforts are joined for one thing and then it starts and people leave it at this point, sustainability becomes a key issue. And we hope that by pushing green microfinance, the results will speak for itself. It becomes lucrative and it becomes an interesting opportunity for others. We have another question from the floor.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Amir Gergis. I'm founding a carbon bank in Africa. We have a presence in Egypt, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. My question is mainly to the EBRD as one of the biggest DFIs in Egypt. One is the cost of MRV in microfinance. When you lend the National Bank of Egypt, you require them to report on certain parameters. The infrastructure in the whole national banking sector doesn't allow that to happen. So how can you adjust that, especially in Africa, to enable the local financing sector to do that? That's the first question.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, and it's not the first time that we've thought about this. But look, I'll be very honest. Green finance and all green approaches, they are incomplete without a certain level of MRV, because we cannot expect to have green ambitious targets and then not back it up with data, because otherwise we're very quickly in a field where we either commit or are accused of greenwashing, and obviously this is not something we want to contribute to. So this is a challenge. I think I have to revert back to our efforts in really capacity building. We're also helping institutions with digitization, which I think is an important point to getting this link set up between the green finance and the MRV that's attached to it. And we're also doing a lot of work on, supporting even regulators on, for example, disclosure and risk identification regulation, so that there is a playing level field, and we have this trickle down effect from clients, corporate clients, even small ones, being able to identify the right data points, playing them up to the financial institutions, who then in return need those to report on their own ESG or climate commitments. So I don't have a perfect solution for you. We cannot say, oh, we're just going to skip the MRV point. It's just not realistic, and it's not going to happen. But we need to work with using digitization, using capacity building, and from the upper side, getting the regulation in place so that it all falls into place.
And my second question is for the green tech selector that you mentioned. What we're trying to solve mainly in developing countries is to build their capacity to do local manufacturing. And the amount of local manufacturers with products on the green selector is very minimal. It's mainly big corporates, big conglomerates. And so how can we increase the number of local manufacturers that can be part of your green selector? Because this is what we need, actually.
Fully agree with you. We are constantly thinking of how we can improve the green technology selector. This is also one of the items that we've obviously thought about. It's also an item that's not that quick and easy for us to implement, because we need somebody who knows the local companies, who can understand the technologies, and then build this into this tool, not just for Egypt, but for all the 35 countries that we operate in. So we've identified this as an area that we would like to improve on, but it will take a while. Yeah.
Thank you.
On that, I would like to add, maybe the plan is to engage with us, our local partners, such as the National Bank of Egypt, where we can introduce this app, which is the selector, and they can pass it on to their end users, because they have a huge portfolio of SMEs and micro that can actually use this app and benefit from it. And it increases the traffic also on the app. And do you want to tell us a little bit about the app, the selector?
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it before. So very briefly, it's a platform. It's based on the web, but you can also download the app actually, and you basically just enter a technology by a specific supplier, and it will tell you whether it is eligible as a green technology, following a set of criteria that EBRD has set. So this is how it works.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anytime.
Any more questions from the floor? Okay. So by this, I would thank our panelists. Thank you very much, and our attendees. And yeah, thank you.